Hi, and welcome to another video from Imagine Landscapes Designs. I'm Sarah, also known online as Imagine Landscapes, and I've had to say that I don't know how many times because I keep mispronouncing my own business name, which is like really silly, but that's my day today. I want to talk today about what I look for in a yarn store. I just came back from Toronto, Ontario, where I went on 2 yarn store walks. So what my husband and I like to do when we go to Toronto every January is we take the subway away from downtown, where our hotel is, and then we walk our way back downtown, zigzagging through yarn shops, ramen restaurants. There's a really amazing bookstore. We stop for little gifts, and if we see a pottery shop, we also stop. And so in Toronto, the density of yarn shops is incredibly high. Like compared to say Vancouver, I was in Vancouver in October this year, 2 Canadian cities. Toronto has, it felt like triple the yarn stores. I was able to visit 5 yarn stores. A 6th was closed, and there were 2 that I wanted to visit that I didn't get to this time. So that's 8 yarn stores within a half-hour drive of downtown Toronto. And that's a half-hour drive in Toronto traffic. It's really incredible. So I was in a lot of yarn stores, and I started wondering, how come some strike me as just more attractive than others? And I started thinking about it, and I wanted to ask what you guys like when you go to a yarn store. What are you looking for? But okay, funny thing, one of the things I like most, and I just realized this on this trip, is I like nooks in a yarn store. So if a yarn store just has one room and all the shelves are along the walls, that's less compelling to me than a yarn store that has a little bit of a zig or a zag, or if it is a sort of the construction where just the room, it is just one big room, where they have maybe a shelf that sticks out a little bit so that there's a little space behind there for something to discover. And that's why, right? When you have a bit of a nook or a second room or some little bit that's hidden, there's discovery. You can't kind of sweep it all in and make your decision and make your plan right away. Oh yeah, I'm gonna ignore that section because all the blues are over here, or whatever it is that is working on your brain that day. But that sense of discovery, I love that. I also really like nice people. Now this obviously goes without saying, but there is a real difference to the way you're welcomed in different yarn stores. One of the yarn stores in Toronto, I've never been in there where I was welcomed heartily or in a friendly manner. I am definitely always a customer when I walk into that store, and never a knitter, never a possible friend, never somebody who might have something really interesting to say and they just can't wait to discover, what little joke I'm about to give, or a little technique I might know for that could help them, that might come up in conversation. So people that at the very least look up when I walk in the store, who smile, make eye contact and smile, that's a big thing. And then just say, even, hey, I'm here if you need me. Are you looking for anything in particular? Or are you just browsing? People that kind of breathe deep and know who they are and can connect with you like in a real way. That's a big deal. I also pay a lot of attention to how people treat my husband. Now, he doesn't knit, but he buys himself a lot of yarn for me to knit. He also does a lot of help for me picking colors for some of my designs. And shops where he's treated as a second-class citizen, we don't spend as much money there. Another thing that's come up recently in knitting world is the discussion of both systemic racism and exclusion, and active individual racism. And I think it's important when I'm looking at a yarn store. I don't know that this has been something I've explicitly noticed, but I definitely will going forward. But I do sort of have a gut feeling about how inclusive does this place feel. That's one reason why I'm kind of paying attention to how they're treating my husband. I'm paying attention to the way they're talking to other people in the store. And there is just a certain vibe that's given off when certain things are frosty and other people are really welcomed. There's a clear thing that's happening there. So the discussion recently about the role of race in making knitting a happy place for some people and not for other people has been, it's been a really important discussion, and I am constantly looking for ways to make myself a better person make myself a better knitter, make myself a better mother, make myself a better business owner, make myself a better person. And I am definitely, absolutely going to be looking explicitly for little signals for whether or not this may be something where people are being excluded or people are being welcomed. And there are little signifiers that people can give that people are extra welcome or extra unwelcome. And that's something I'm going to be paying attention to. So inclusivity is important. Being a friend, being someone who looks you in the eye, or looks me in the eye and welcomes me, but also the people around me. It's important. I like to be around people that like to be around me. And that's one reason why this discussion of systemic problems that where we've got bias, maybe that we don't even notice, we don't even recognize the little social signals that we're giving. It's been something where I've been trying to educate myself lately. So I hope that the yarn stores I was in were inclusive. I know that some of them were specifically inclusive in particular ways because of the neighborhood situation that they had going on around them in Toronto. Something else I look for in a yarn store is color, and specifically local color. I like to go into a yarn store and see something I've never seen before. I like when I can be in a city like Toronto and every yarn store's got a slightly different flavor, a slightly different Canadian dyer that they're specializing in. And I love it when the color is rich and saturated. And there's certain yarn lines where it's almost as though the dye, there's like two passes almost, is the only way I can describe it. Like there's like an initial color, but then there's almost like this frosting over the top, and it's usually a little bit darker, almost like the very edges are black. I love yarns like that. Malabrigo sometimes does that. I've seen it a little bit in Mad Tosh, although I see Mad Tosh in person very rarely, but there are certain colors where they almost sort of have like a black external little, I can't say sparkle or shine, but there's like this like smoky outside. I love that. I love the way it changes the depth of color underneath it. So my eye is definitely drawn towards rich colors. I am not a pastel person for the most part. And I really don't like pink. I think it's because growing up in the 80s as a blonde, it was the expectation, but I really felt like I failed at being a girl most of my childhood, and feeling like a failed blonde in the 80s. I got a real visceral sense of not liking pink. So I'm not looking for pink when I walk into a yarn store. I'm looking for beautiful blues and really fabulous grays. Those are definitely the ones that I want to be looking for. I also really like in a yarn store when they carry an abundance of tools, where it feels like these are people that really understand that it's not just the yarn, that there needs to be choice in what kind of needle or what kind of buttons. There's a sense of abundance in certain yarn stores in the tool and notion section that gives me a good sense that these people love crafting, that they just love it, and that they want the people there to love it too, that it's not just buy a skein of yarn, buy a set of needles and go off and do your thing, maybe come back and take some classes. No, this feeling that there's like a really amazing ecosystem of crafting, and in that there's gorgeous yarns, and there's gorgeous yarns of a bunch of kinds, and then there's a bunch of tools and a bunch of things we can do with that yarn. And that if bamboo doesn't work for you, let's try these needles. That these ones don't work for you, let's try some carbons. There is something about that sense that, oh yeah, these are people that really are sort of like actively populating this ecosystem of crafting with lots of options for people. That's also a really good sign for me. The last thing I really look for in a yarn shop is a really comfortable seating. I love to see a table in the middle where someone's actually sitting. When I walk into a yarn store and someone is sitting, especially if it's the staff, it's actually sitting at that main yarn table in the middle, or there's couches. I mean, couches are a great sign, but the idea that there's staff that sit and knit, or maybe they're up and about, but like their project is at the table and it's open and they've got a little basket or a work progress bag or something, and they're sitting and knitting. A bunch of stuff got cut off, and so I think that what I had said was, I'm asking what you guys like in yarn shops. I know that I have an unusual relationship with yarn shops. My one experience with having a local yarn shop was brief because the owner had to close after a while because of an accident. So I'm wondering, those of you who go maybe to the same yarn shop again and again, what is it that brings you back to the same one a lot? And when you do travel, what is it in a yarn shop that when you see gets you excited, sort of as a signifier that this is going to be an awesome place that you're going to enjoy spending time in and money at? We talked about a lot of the things I like, and well, it's just going to be one of those chaosy kind of videos, guys. This is Whisper, who is one of the reasons that Sushi lives upstairs in her little place because she hasn't learned to get along with the new kittens yet. And the cats have been eating at my lights and all sorts of things. So I think I will give it a go at just being done. I'd like to hear what you like in yarn stores, and I hope you guys have a great week. This is just so bright here. Bye-bye.